and the restaurant successful, like everything was going for me. And that's why it was so weird when I'm just like, I don't want to go to work and I don't want to write a new menu and I don't want to do this. And it was all because I had transitioned to arrogance out of confidence. I
Yeah.
think that's something I've realized in the last 2 weeks. That's what happened. When you start slacking and you start not caring so much and you start not doing all the things that you know you should do, you have to rely on arrogance to get you through the day because you're like, I'm good and I do this and I do that. But confidence is this quiet partner that you can have where you're comfortable with who you are because you're doing what you are supposed to be doing.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Paint Method podcast. My name is David Garibaldi, and if you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. Here at the Paint Method, we really are focusing on discovering where we are in life and then creating where we go next. And we're doing that through conversations we're having with people who I know, some that I don't know. We're making some new friends with this podcast, which has been really, really amazing. And, wherever you're listening to this as well, I hope that today's conversation, I hope that it challenges you because this person, they're never comfortable, and I think that their life is an amazing result of thriving even in chaos as well, and being presented with situations and always knowing how to grow through them. And this person is a chef. He's a restaurateur. He founded the restaurant Localis, which is located in Sacramento, California, but also is listed in the Michelin list of restaurants. He is been awarded by Wine Spectator with the awards of excellence, and also the winner of season 1 of The Globe on Peacock Network. Now, he took a very unlikely path to become the culinary rock star he is today, and we'll get into that. And I just, he's honored to call him a friend and cannot wait for you to meet Chef Chris Dann. And by the way, if you're listening to this, be sure to subscribe on whatever platform. And if you're watching this, to subscribe as well. Let's meet Chef Chris Dann. Let's go. We are all on our paint journey, but where are we now? And where do we go next? This is how passion, action, intent, new, teach. This is the Paint Method.
I'm the king of the what if game.
I like that. The king of the what if. I think that should be the title to the podcast.
There it is.
Now, people that are listening to this or watching this, they're like, who is Chef Christopher Dann?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into your backstory, but real quick, you are the owner, restaurateur, and chef of Localis, which is, I'm just going to be very transparent, one of, if not my favorite restaurant that I've been to anywhere.
Well, thank you.
In the
That's
world.
Extremely kind.
And, we're lucky to have you down the street from here. But tell us real quick about Localis, like the type of food, the vibe there. And then we definitely got to get into the backstory of what led to that.
Yeah. And that's actually something that I failed at for a lot of time at Localis. People, what do you do there? And then I would go into this long diatribe about, like who I am as a chef and all these things. And now I've really kind of secured kind of what I think that we do. We're constantly innovative. A lot of restaurants rest on the comfortable things that they know how to do well. And we need those restaurants, right? Like we need the spot where every time you go and you get that same thing and it's delicious.
Yes.
At Localis, the focus is on change. I always want to be changing and learning and doing something else. As far as the style, we've kind of settled into this rustic modern is kind of what we are. We're always pushing the edge of modern cuisine and bringing things together and molecular gastronomy, but only using it in a space where it makes sense with a dish, where it makes sense to the guest, and still retaining, plating that is structured and beautiful, but plating that's not, like straight lines, perfect dots, like that's a style that I'm not interested in. So that I kind of get that balance of modern cuisine and rustic cuisine. And I like cooking food that tastes delicious. I think I forget about most everything else. I also am a sommelier. I love wine. I love spirits because they're all flavors. They're just like paints, People think about them as separate, like food and wine. And I'm like, flavors. So for me, we really try to focus at Localis on bringing all the flavors together, whether you're drinking it, eating it, seeing it, hearing it. The music is important. And the vibe, I would say, we're just trying to create a place where you can come and get an experience that you're going to remember for a long period of time, but also be really comfortable and have fun. I think that we play a very fine balance of fine dining, definitely execution level service. We're really pushing for those perfect, qualities in that aspect, but also have fun. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to cuss, I'm going to tell a
Yeah.
joke, and some of them are going to be terrible. And then I'm going to make fun of myself for telling a terrible joke. Be comfortable, like if you see us comfortable, you're going to be comfortable. And that's like the whole thing about Localis now. So,
Yeah, it's a very unassuming location and
Mhm.
and vibe. And I say that unassuming because you walk in, you experience it. It is a high level. I mean, you're mentioned in the Michelin list.
Mhm.
You've been, I think, the top 38, 39 restaurants to visit in California.
Mhm.
Highly awarded by Wine Spectator. I mean, the list goes on. You're not just making fancy food that tastes
Yeah.
good and in a fun environment. I mean, it is actually measured and awarded. And when I've been there, I think that's I can agree with all that because you sit at the chef's counter, the table, or even if you're at the table, and it's the quality is just so high, but you feel so comfortable, and that's usually not the case.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious, your background was not just like I'm a kid, I'm into cooking in the culinary world. It was kind of zigzag for a
Mhm.
little bit. And what was early life like early passions that you thought you were gonna do for the rest of your life?
Yeah. I wanted to be a musician since day one. My mom was a guitarist and incredible vocalist. Um, Her sisters, all of them were different sections, tenor, alto, baritone, and they sang so beautifully together. So I remember like young kid getting goosebumps at the three of them harmonizing, these songs that they're singing.
Did you sing?
Yes, I
Okay.
still
Oh,
sing.
all
Yeah,
right.
a lot. Um, but growing up with music and like my family, no matter what was going on, cleaning the house, hanging out, whatever it was, if it was summertime, doors are open, music is blaring, every kind of music you could think of. My parents did not listen to one style.
They
It
didn't
was
lean
country,
to
it
a
was
certain
R&B, it was
style.
classic rock, it was folk, it was this,
Yeah.
it was that. They listened to everything.
Yeah.
So growing up, like it was always music in the house. It was always music being played. It was always playing music. So I always wanted to be a musician. That was like the thing that I wanted the most. And I chased that for until, 10 or 12 years ago when I finally just decided like I don't want to do music for the sake of money. And the kind of music that I'm doing is not conducive to a career, and
What kind of music was it?
death
What
metal.
death metal?
Yeah.
All right, so walk me through this. You were you playing drums,
I
guitar?
started guitar. Yeah.
Guitar. So you get your guitar. Who were the inspirations
Well,
at
early
that
on,
time?
Metallica,
Okay.
was a huge inspiration. I loved Metallica. I've always been drawn to technical music.
Yeah.
I love emotional music as well, stuff that makes you feel. But I love technicality. I think that's what I love about fine dining.
Heavy death metal is very technical.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I think it's actually misconstrued that people think it's just a bunch of people screaming and as loud as noise possible. If you listen to it, the counts are insane. And they're never just regular 1, 2, 3, 4. It's
No.
like I can't even think of the other counts, but I know there's a lot of different ones. And so, being in that environment do you think that that's where you first started feeling comfortable in chaos?
Yes. And it's funny with death metal too, because the bigger death metal bands from the early era were simplistic. And because majority of the population prefers simplistic music, it's just fun to listen to. And once again, that doesn't mean bad or good. It just means, for me, in general, you listen to popular music, it's 4/4 counts. It's easy to listen to.
Yeah.
So the death metal that people know is just like raw and just like simple stuff. It's catchy, but it's simple. The stuff I listen to got way into like these people that spend, they're MIT graduates.
Yeah.
They're incredibly talented musicians, not just death metal, but they play jazz and they play, classical music and they play all this crazy stuff, but they choose to push the boundaries of speed and complexity and technique together, which is technical death metal. And that always drew me because I always want to be the best at whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Like if I'm fishing, then I want to be the best fisherman, and I
Yeah.
want to do everything that I can. And I'm incredibly tenacious when I want something. So music was that thing, and I progressed from Metallica. then I got a little bit heavier, and then I remember the first death metal album I listened to was 6 Feet Under, and it was so absurd and intriguing. I'm just like,
Yeah.
what are these vocals? What is this all about? And from the day one, it wasn't anger or like a lot of people associate death metal with like angry, guys smashing each other around.
Yeah. I mean, that's accurate. People
True.
would think that, but yes, there's a lot more. They're artists. There's a lot more emotion behind
Well,
it.
I've been to a lot of different concerts. Music isn't just something I play. I love music.
Yeah.
I eat it. It's food to me. It's it's for the soul. And I've been to so many different concerts of different styles of music, and I will tell you that a mosh pit at a death metal show is the best place to be.
Really?
You go to like a hardcore show or like a punk show, like they're hitting each other fists, and they're not picking each other up. It's like ravaged,
I've actually been in a I don't know if the band was death metal or screamo. So my brother Chase, growing up, he was in bands. So we backtrack. We played music growing up. I played the trumpet. My brother played the clarinet. He played saxophone. He played drums. Eventually, he got into a band in high school. So he was in like that kind of screamo world. I mean, he had his hair off to the side, all black, just hated me for whatever reason. But as we got older and I started touring, he would come with me to help me on the road. And so we were in New Orleans at one point, and he said, "Hey, there's a band that I love. I think the band's name was Under Oath."
Yeah, totally.
I was kind of familiar with them. I didn't really know what to expect, and it was at the House of Blues in New Orleans. So I was like, let's go.
Venue,
why not? We get in there. I think the opening band already went on, so I'm like, let's make our way to the front. Why not? He's like, gives me this look like, are you sure? Because there's no turning back.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's go. It's a rock show. Like, how bad can it be?
Yeah.
They come out. I'm like, oh, this is insane. This is awesome. And then all of a sudden, I feel like I'm in a dishwasher with like a bunch of, or even a washing machine with a bunch of black t-shirts and fists flying. But before you know it, I'm running, like crawling to the back of the room, trying to save myself. And I learned in that moment, I am not made for that.
Yeah.
and you will never know until you get thrown into a mosh pit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now that I'm,
but you were.
I'm not though. That's the funny thing. Like on stage, watching that, like great, but being in it, I'm a claustrophobic. I don't like being tight into places. Mm-hmm. And I found that like the older I get, I'm almost 40 now. I'll be 40 this year. The only shows I want to go see are ones where I can sit down at a distance and like watch the band and enjoy it. But I'm like, I'm over all of that. I've never been like the mosh pit guy. Like I love the energy when you're on stage and you're creating that because it feeds you like a drug. Absolutely. But when you're in it, it's not my thing either. So
yeah, I would have to agree with you there. So I was like, I'll just take your word for it. I don't want to find out again what it's like. Yeah. And so, you're in this band. You guys were touring around the country, around the world?
Yeah, a little bit here and there. Yeah, not like extreme world tours, but definitely reached out to some places and got to go cool places.
But what was, because that seems from the outside that you're in a successful path in that it's going somewhere. What was the breaking point when you thought to yourself, should I continue this?
Yeah, it's a very specific story. I was an electrician at the time and making really great money, which is the only reason I could continue being in a band.
Okay.
Affording the van and the trailer and all the gear and all that stuff, and I was paying the bills and just trying to do music as much as possible. Death metal is not a very lucrative business. There are bands that have made it really nice, but the biggest death metal band isn't making as much as a mid-tier like rock band, that's on tour in arenas and stuff. So you're just not in that realm. You're never going to be, rich or wealthy as a death metal musician. And as a lowly death metal band, I mean, signed and touring is cool, but what does that really mean? You know what I mean? A lot of bands are signed and tour to make zero money, which is a lot of the time what we would do. Mm-hmm. I also was never the greatest musician. I have to state that clearly because I don't really think I gave it the practice that it deserved. I got really good at our songs, but that was it. And there's a story for later.
Is it because that came natural and you didn't feel like you needed the discipline for it?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. You reach a certain point where people think that you're good and your ego takes over and you're like, I'm good. I don't need to practice
anymore. It's a hard place for any artist, creator to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And so anyways, we went on a very long tour and came back, and Jessica, my girlfriend, wife now, but she just pretty much set me down and was like, listen, I'm raising your kid. Like, this is your child and I love her, but like, it's your child and I'm here alone taking care of your child.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it anymore. And at that point, I was like, well, I'm not making it anywhere in this music career. I'm having fun and I'm getting to see places. And there's a lot of really cool, stories that I get to have now for being on tour and doing that. But it just wasn't going to work. And I wasn't going to be that. And I just did not want to be an electrician anymore at all. And she
So those
told me
two
this.
things you were doing, you were
Yeah,
like, I'm
done.
not really feeling any of
Yeah,
these.
I'm done. I love music. I still play music, but it just wasn't something I wanted to like strive so hard for and spend so much time and energy on.
Yeah.
And Jessica and I were talking in the shower and we get out and I'm sitting at the edge of the bed and I'm just in that moment of like, what the fuck am I going to do with my life right now?
Mhm.
I'm so driven and now I have no drive. I don't want to do electrical. I don't want to be a musician anymore. How am I going to what am I going to do? And a commercial for the Art Institute comes on TV and it's like, be a chef.
Wow.
And that commercial, the only time I've ever actually
the
listened
ads
to a
work.
commercial. I hate ads and I'm like, yeah, it got me, But what kind of situation are you in when you see that? Like it's such a
Yeah.
rare thing. It was like meant to be. Obviously, I wasn't a person of faith or anything at the time, and it was just. But looking back, like something had to be in a place in a certain position to be like, hey, this. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh! And then literally the next day, I went and applied to culinary school, and
Yeah.
that was the beginning of my career.
So you that's a huge shift. I mean,
Huge.
immediate. It was
Yeah.
like you ask yourself, do I want to keep doing this? The ad comes on, you answer that. Next day, you're off and running.
Yeah.
So you start this culinary journey.
Mhm.
And was the thought that you just wanted to work in restaurants, or was it like rock star chef? I'm gonna be that.
What do you think, David?
I mean, you're a rock star. Come on,
Of course, dude.
Look at where you are now.
Of course.
I can only imagine that
Yeah.
was the option.
There's never anything in my life that's ever been, I just want to do this.
Yeah.
It's been, I want to be the best at this, period.
Yeah.
Like as an electrician.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the
No.
thing. There's so many creatives that, and I get it, you have to be humble because we have this creative thought that we didn't ask for. It just kind of comes to us. And you're like,
Mhm.
this is amazing. I'm so humbled by this opportunity. But also, it comes with the responsibility to use it as well and to use it at as high level as you can.
Yeah.
And you don't find out what that high level that you can until you push.
Yeah. I think people are scared
Mhm.
to really like give into something 100%. And I think that I just don't have that fear. I think that you probably don't have that fear of just like, I'm just going to do it. Right. And I don't care like what I have to do in the meantime to get to the point where I can do this for the majority of my life, but I'm going to figure out a way and I'm going to not stop. Like I never thought like, hey, I'm just going to work in restaurants.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to own a restaurant. I'm going to do this. And that was it. And 5 years later, I opened Localis, which is nuts.
Now, all right, we'll definitely get to that, but I want to talk about this. So in school, how long
Mhm.
did school take?
School took me much longer because I quit
Okay.
for a little while in the middle. I mean, the very short synopsis of it was I got hired on at a sushi restaurant the day after I started culinary school. So I
Okay.
see the ad. The next day I get into culinary school. The day after that I get a job in a kitchen.
You're just on a roll.
On a
You're
roll.
like,
Yeah.
go to school, done. One day, done.
Yeah.
A restaurant, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 3 months into this job, they give me the kitchen. They're like, we're going to have you run the kitchen.
And why do you think that was? Was it leadership? Was it skills? Was it just, were they crazy? Like, what do you think?
I think crazy was up there. I have this thing. I have this energy about me, and it's throughout my life. I've battled with it because it's good and bad. Because people get this sense from me, like I am going to do everything in my power to try to provide the best of whatever it is that I'm doing, and people fall in love with that. And then when they get involved with me, then they kind of see like, oh, there's this other side that drives that might not be so amazing on the front, so yes, this drive is there, this intensity, this work ethic, all of these things this person possesses, and I want that. But then you have to deal with me, right? And
It's when the romance goes away.
exactly,
You know, and you're like, all right, we're in a relationship now.
yeah,
How do we really make this work? And
Totally.
what is that, what does that Chef Chris look like and sound like? That other side.
unrelenting, which is tiresome for a lot of
Yeah.
people, you know? Um, when I was an employee, I worked so hard for the company first. My mentality has always been, if I do extremely well for the people that I'm working for, they will take care of me. Then you realize real quickly that people will just use you. Not everyone, but a lot
Yeah.
of people are like, hey, this person will work themselves into the ground. I'm going to use that to my advantage and not take care of them. And I think that back part of it is this incredible intensity of want and desire to be the best and push. And I don't think a lot of people are real comfortable in that atmosphere. They're like, whoa, like, let's slow down. Like, and I'm like, no, we got to go now.
Well, I think because you probably had the energy that they needed
Yeah.
for their environment, and they may not have had that. And so, even in those situations, how do you start to choose and say, I know what I'm capable of. I know what I bring to the table. How do you make a decision to say either move on or address it? Because as I see you
Totally.
operate, things can't stay the same.
No.
So how do you move on or move through uh feeling that you're in a stagnant situation, but you need to take control?
Yeah. I think arrogance plays into that, which is a lot different than confidence. I know as an electrician, right, before I was cooking, I would stay at any company that could teach me something. The second that I felt like I wasn't learning, I was out and I would just quit and go somewhere else. I never addressed it because I didn't feel it pertinent. It's like, I don't expect this person to care about me. And I'm also not going to say, hey, I think I know more than you now, so I'm not comfortable working for you. But I always worked for people that I felt comfortable learning from. And the second that I felt like I had surpassed them, and the difference between arrogance and confidence, I'm an insanely fast learner. I'm very intuitive. So when I see something, I can usually dissect it and break it down and be like, okay, this is how I can do it. This is why I do it. I love to know the reason behind I'm doing things. I'm not one of the chefs or any other, father or whatever that's like, because I said so.
Yeah.
I'm like, here's the reason, here's why I'm making this decision. And I think that as an employee, it was tough for me because I was just rolling. I stayed with some people for a while. There was one company that I stayed with for 3 years because the money was really good and I was doing really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And they were kind of the same as the restaurant, but before that, they were just like, I think like 6 months into the job, like, here's a van, make your own schedule, like, just go do your thing. You obviously got this down, and that was kind of cool for me because they trusted me. They were like, this person's going to do a good job.
Yeah.
I think that's rare. I think that's a very rare trait in today's world. And I think that's why I've moved up so fast everywhere I've been, is because I'm very trustworthy and I'm going to do the best job that I can possibly do.
Yeah. So what does it feel like then when you hit your ultimate ceiling? Let's just say your ultimate ceiling in the past in music and electrician was, I've got family. And I'm just not as driven about this. Let's just say your new ultimate high ceiling in culinary world is working for other people. You're moving up. You're moving up in quality of locations as well. And at some point, you've got to feel like you're hitting the ceiling. You're like, I'm working for people. So how does that shift happen where you start exploring, it's time that I buy or create a restaurant?
Yeah. It was absurdly fast. So I started at Hapa Sushi up in Auburn. 3 months later, I started running the kitchen. I stayed there for over a year, and I had quit about 9 months into my program at school because I was working 60, 70 hours a week and trying to do school. And I was like, I can't do this, and I was actually making good money, which was nice because, going from my electrical salary of my own business and working for other people, I was making way more money than I should have been making at the time.
Yeah.
And then I went to making minimum wage, and it was like a harsh reality of lifestyles where, where I would buy a van for touring and I would buy this for this and I would buy this for this. Pretty soon I'm like, how are we going to pay rent? Like, how do we have, we don't have electricity. I remember a night Jessica and I slept, outside the house because it was so hot inside the house because we didn't have AC because there was no power because we couldn't pay the bill,
Yeah.
And but it was this drive of like, it'll work. And then I started making money at Hapa, and that ended really abruptly and really weirdly. And then after that, I jumped into another job, and I realized real quickly that while I learned a lot trying to run that kitchen, I had also built up an ego, a big one, and it was not deserved.
That's usually not caught by, it's
Yeah.
usually not, people are usually not that self-aware
Yeah.
that early on.
Yeah.
What did
I was.
but did you know that then or now?
Oh, I knew that then.
Okay.
Yeah. The second I got out of that kitchen and went into another spot, and I was so uncomfortable. It was high volume. It was big, and I was completely unaware.
Mm.
I've never really been the person. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. As a child, I did a lot of lying, a lot. My family was super poor. My dad was a deadbeat. Wasn't really part of my life. Addict, all these terrible things, and I lied to make up for that, right? And I got used to doing that. And then when I hit my adolescent years, I started having to go to a therapist and figure things out. And then I went that full 180, where it was lie about everything to be truthful about everything. And once that happened, it was pretty easy to start seeing real quickly your errors and your problems, and most of all of the issues that you have in your life are because of you.
Yeah.
So that was just a harsh reality going from running my spot, and being the boss and creating the stuff and doing everything, to being a cook in a kitchen that no one cared about. I'm the new guy, and I had this ego, this chip on my shoulder, like I was some sort of badass. And I just realized I wasn't. So I rededicated. I went back to school because I wanted to finish.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, okay,
That's a
time
big
to get
step.
back to school. I got to go finish this thing.
Yeah.
I don't like leaving things unfinished. And so I went back and got another job down in Sacramento, which was a bit rough for me then, because living in Auburn and driving down to Sac and not making any money. I mean, it was a low paying job.
Yeah.
And it was at 1022, which was in Old Town. It's closed now. And I went there for dinner, and the food was really good. And I was like, I want to talk to the chef. And he comes out, and I'm like, I want to work here.
Had you ever done that before, where you eat a meal and you're like, I want to see the chef. I want to meet them. Okay.
No, but I was looking for a job. I was looking for inspiration, and this place inspired me. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. So he comes out, I want to work for you. How many years experience do you have? 1. It's like, sorry, you can't work here. You have to have a minimum of, whatever it was. And I'm like, well, why don't you let me come in and work for free, and I'll prove to you that I belong in your kitchen. And I did, and they hired me, and I stayed there for a while too.
How long did you work for free?
Oh, just 2 days.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just enough to show them hey, I'm serious, I'm a hard worker.
I'm a true believer in the intern mindset, or getting your foot in the door, doing whatever it takes.
Yep.
There's so many opportunities that have come from me just giving, whether it's donating or free shows, just to show proof of work, proof of concept. Look, I know I'm made for this, so let me show you.
And I think that's actually getting suppressed in today's culture, right? It's oh, I don't work for free. And it's it's not working for free. It's proving grounds. It's showing someone that I'm dedicated, I'm serious, and I want to do this. It's different in kitchens, some people use stages for weeks and months of free labor. But when you're just going in there to show someone hey, I'm going to do this, this painting for you live and show you what I do, to show you that I'm meant to be on this stage with you, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's important, and I wish people could get out of the mindset of it's free labor, or it's free this. It's well, yeah, but it's my opportunity to get something from it. It's what's the payoff? You want your payoff now. I'm looking at my payoff future.
Oh yeah. I mean, perfect example, most recently in 2019, when I went on tour with Kiss, when it started, it was it was a huge opportunity just to do the first 10 shows, but I knew they had 80 plus shows after that.
Yeah.
So I'm going into this with the mindset that I'm gonna do so good. I'm gonna compete at such a high level that it'll be an easy decision for them to want to take me on. And so every day I approached it like that, and I just went in there. Pay wasn't that great at first, but they still took care of a lot of things for me: production, tour bus, things that we know cost a lot of money on the road. So they covered a ton of stuff, and I always believe too, what's better than getting one big paycheck? A bunch of paychecks that are, maybe half that, but for, 10 times that. So that's what I was working for. I was like, I want to work for it, the big tour. And sure enough, I wish they told me sooner, but the last day of the tour, of the first 10 days, they're like, all right, you want to go on the rest of the tour? I'm like, you could have told me maybe 2 days ago.
But yes, please.
But yes, we're not gonna argue about this.
Yeah. No, I think that's a mindset that's important. And I think that we're in a minority with that mindset. I'm not looking to make all the dollars from one guest in the restaurant. I'm looking to make just a couple dollars from a bunch of people that are going to come back over and over again and learn to trust us and never care about the money in the future.
Yeah.
And I think so often in our culture today, it's all about money right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's like
One.
you want the gig or the career?
Yeah.
Do you want the first date or the relationship?
Yeah.
You're investing into one of them. Like one of them is going to happen based on your actions and how you
Totally.
approach it.
Well, like what are you going to do on that first date I talk about this with my wife because we're 20 years in.
Wow.
20
that's
years.
Congrats. That's amazing.
And, it's been the worst and it's been the best and everything in between. But one thing that I've remembered, especially lately, is never stop dating your wife because you work so hard to get the chance to be with that person and you do everything that you possibly can. And then you get that person and then you stop. No, you still got to pretend every day that that's your girl and you want to get her. Yeah, you have her, but if you lose that desire, to chase after something, it's not going to be the same. And then you settle into a relationship and then years down the road, it's like, well, I'm done trying and you're done trying and now we don't like each other and we're still the same people. And have we treated each other like we love each other? Like I'm still after you like every day, like that's my girl. I want her,
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with careers or anything else, like put the work in as much as you do the first date, like you said, the gig or the career, like, are you going to be arrogant and be like, I'm not doing that gig unless I get this much? Or are you going to be smart and think like, well, yeah, I'll take this gig for crappy pay because it's going to lead to this gig and then lead to that gig and lead to that gig, So
Yeah. I think it's a perfect segue to go into Localis, but also, you did this as a team with your wife. I know that, you obviously there's a balance in relationships, that kind of, when you're with someone who can make up for things that you're just not skilled at. But what was it like? You came home and you're like, Jessica, what was it like? I have an idea. There's a place. Like, how did that go when you brought that home to Jessica and said, this is what I want to do next after all this time in kitchens?
Yeah. And it was a awkward time in my marriage too. Like things are, I think me, I'm okay talking about everything. It was a rough time, so there wasn't a whole lot of communication, like I was independent. I was doing my thing, and I was working in restaurants, running restaurants, and was approached by a group that had a concept that they wanted to have me be part of. And I was just like, that's not something I'm interested in. Thanks anyways. Well, what would you want to do? And I pitched Localis. So it wasn't like, I had this idea over the course of a long time. Now, Localis has been a dream since day one, but the restaurant itself kind of just came in this funky, weird way. And I made the choice right away, and Jessica didn't have a whole lot of anything to do with the restaurant for the first year because I wasn't the owner. I was still building the reputation. And then when I decided to take over the whole thing, Jessica started getting engaged in a little bit. She still had a full-time career. And then like 3 years in, really like started taking over a lot of aspects of the restaurant and now full-fledged partners in the restaurant. So it wasn't like that beginning thing where like, hey, we're doing this, it was kind of like, okay, babe, you do what you're going to do, like, cause I was bouncing around in kitchens, like I'd stay no more than a year at a place running it, like as executive chef, because I just was like bored. The next thing was the board. And I had some jobs where she was just like, why are you leaving? Like a country club, crazy good pay, benefits, barely worked, like it's the perfect job.
A guarantee of like, it's going to be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
which is not the case with restaurants. It is. No. Correct me if I'm wrong, but starting a restaurant is the ultimate putting your skin in the game because you're involved at every level.
Yeah.
From creative to finance.
Yep.
From, hospitality to quality control and everything in between. Did you have a natural shift going from even in that location, working for someone to owner, like full on responsibility?
Yeah. I think, there was a big difference between working and owning in the mentality, but not so much in the work ethic, to be totally honest with you. I was running the restaurant for the first year. I did everything. Yeah. They had financial stuff going on, but I ran it 2 numbers, and I've always been very interested in the math and the numbers behind restaurants, which I think is kind of a rare thing too. A lot of chefs are like creative cook, that's what I do. You take care of the finances. I love achieving food costs and labor costs. Like it's
Yeah.
something that I'm really like
That's
thrive
rare
at,
for an artist.
Yeah, and I'm excited because that restaurant doesn't make sense without somebody doing a lot of the jobs.
Mhm.
And we had to do that. Like Jessica and I have to take on a lot of roles to make that restaurant work, because if we did have a media team and this and that and that and layers of management, like a lot of restaurants do, we wouldn't be able to survive. We're only successful because we're willing to put a lot of work into it. Um, but yeah, it was, I've always worked like an owner. And I think that's something that has made me successful in my career before I owned, was that I always envisioned, like, this is my restaurant. How would I run it? I take it very personally. And that's also weird for some owners. Some owners were like, hands off, like Chris has got it. He's running the restaurant. I'm out. Other owners are like, well, I want this say, and I want this, and I want that, and it's like, okay, well, let's talk about it. But like, I'm doing this. We're doing this right now. And that's that whole, like I said, that balance of drive. And, I think I'm intimidating to a lot of people because I'm just so like in. And I think that's scary for people. We don't live in a culture where people are in anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
but you understood in those moments that it's going to require 100% of your energy and dedication for this to be successful, not just to keep the doors open.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think, let's talk about this. The type of food and the presentation. I wish I wish I had this set up to like pull up the pictures on the screen, but it is like, it's like balancing colors on a canvas, the way that you present food. So one part of it is the taste, and then the other part is the presentation. I'm sure there's other parts, but how do you find this balance of the two? And I think because you do, that's what makes it so inventive in what it is. And I just want to say, the food is on the level of, French Laundry type of stuff. I've been there. It's on that level. Alinea in Chicago. Joel Robuchon. I mean, those of you who are listening to this, go Google those names. And I hate to compare, but I'm just saying you are competing at a very high level, and it takes a dedication to look at this, a certain way. And so talk about that creative process, developing a dish from taste to presentation.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question before, and it's really easy for me to answer. It's taste first, period. I'm like, what do I want to eat? Because I'm fat and I love food. And I think about flavors first. Like, if it's duck and it's the season, which is so important to me. Like, we live in farm to fork capital, right? Like, there's a lot of hoopla about it. A lot of restaurants, that buy local tomatoes, and that's, farm to fork and everything. And I'm not disparaging the restaurant. I'm just saying, like, there's a big difference between that and what we do, which is literally every month source what is right now, right here. And we'll cut off something if it's not happening locally. Like, we won't just sub in something else. Like, no, I'm done. So flavor first is what I think about most. I get excited about a dish. And it's not excited for other people to eat it. It's excited for me to eat it. I create dishes based on like, oh man, like if I had duck with, these lentils that were dressed in this, and then it was like, then I think about textures next. So, okay, I got these lentils and they're like, creamy and nice. And I've got this duck with a crispy skin. I'm going to need more crunch. I'm going to need something like this. And then I start getting into the look of the dish. Then I'm like, all right, well, how can I plate this to where it looks interesting and different? I'm always trying to push, my art on plates, because it's real easy to get comfortable doing something. I always want to push myself out into that chaos, into something that I'm not comfortable with. And then after I've created the taste first, and then the texture second, and then the look of it last, then I start making sure, is this good to eat? Like the way that people eat it. Are they going to ask me like, how do I eat this? Or is it awkward to pick up? And then last but not least, I kind of don't base my cooking on really expensive ingredients, but definitely break down the protein that I'm using, anything expensive on the plate. How much is this plate costing me? How does it fix into the food cost? And then once I've solved those, 4 to 5 equations, then we start going into actually, doing it. And then there's a process now beyond that for the photos. I take photos of all of our food now, and we've actually
beautiful photos. Do you take those?
Huge praise, yeah.
Oh my God.
So it's been really funny to have that
incredible.
added in, and it's light and it's angles. That's all photography is. I mean, and I don't mean to once again like not dumb down photography for any of those photographers. I'm not saying that's all you do, but if you know how to use light and you know how to use angles, you can get good photos.
Yeah.
Recently, I've been working with natural warm light, which is
Mhm.
very non-traditional for food lighting, because usually it's like bright and it's very clean light.
And you
like,
know your subject well, which is
yeah,
your food. You
exactly.
know how it should be presented.
Yeah, I just took the last picture I posted on Instagram was of the duck dish.
Okay.
And it's the first, you look through my feed and it's like, boom, different. The
Yeah.
lighting is different. It's
Okay.
warm and it's yellows and oranges, on this plate. And
I'll
I
be
was
dropping
like,
some drool emojis. On
okay,
there
cool.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was like the first time that I wanted to push myself to not have to be like, well, this is what everyone says to do. And my pictures are now in the Michelin guide. They're all over, the internet on all these pages. And everyone's like, hey, I need the release. And I'm like, no, it's just me. Go ahead. And they're like, you took these? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, are you a photographer? I'm like, no, they're on my phone,
Yeah.
like quite literally.
No, I'm
So-
passionate about every aspect of my
Literally,
business.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, recently I fell off real hard from posting on social media platforms because I don't care that much about it. Like, I don't.
But you give a fuck enough
Oh,
to
for sure.
do it. And like that's so I just want to point something out. And I love this train of thought that you're on, but it's like every step of the way, you have to care so much about everything. And I think that where businesses fall short, and I've done this, there's certain parts of my business I just don't care enough, and I see that that's why it lacks growth, or that's why it lacks certain parts. But if you're not doing it, you got to have someone who does. And you were that for other people for so long, and now you're on this, this you just care so much.
Yeah, and I think it also drives you mad. When you have to care about every element of your business, that's where intimidation comes in. People are like, geez, you're caring about this, like you're the chef. And I'm like, no, I'm the business owner. Like, that is important to me. Like the way that you're washing this dish is really important to me. Do you know how expensive that dish is? Like, and I can't afford to buy new ones. So we need to take care of the ones that we have. And when you start caring that much about things, people don't take that as like, man, this guy really cares about everything. They're like, what a dick, like it's hard to deal with. It's true.
It that's part of the armor that you wear as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Just in general. And I'll bring something that we were talking earlier, and I think it just goes to show what the story is. If people don't like something in the restaurant, they'll leave a negative review, and they don't mention maybe one of the chefs that misplated something, or the person at the door. It goes back to you. Like, you hold the responsibility, and that's also why you have to be just diligent on your team.
Yeah.
Whether it's the training process, whether it's the correction, and so on, the list goes on, because it ultimately falls back on you. And you want to keep the doors open as long as possible.
Of course.
And how long has Localis been around?
7 years.
That's a lifetime in restaurant world.
Oh,
What's the average?
Look at this gray hair. Like, I'm telling you, I saw a picture of myself recently from before at Chibo 7, the place I was at before I opened Localis. I look like a child. I'm not joking. I look like a child. And now I look at myself and I'm like an older man now. Like, that span of 7 years was rough.
You earned the gray. You earned any wrinkle. Like, I love getting older, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
The more time goes on, and forget all the physical things that you got to still work on, because they don't work as well. But, just knowing that what comes with time is knowledge. Well, and I think I lean so much and appreciate that as I get older and as time goes on, because it's like, I'll take the gray with the knowledge.
Oh, 100%.
Any day.
Yeah. And you get taken more seriously as you get older, right? Because you're now a sage. You're growing into that aspect where people now look up to you versus look at you and be like, you're a 20-something-year-old. You don't know shit.
Yeah.
Now it's like you're 40 and you're, an entrepreneur. You're successful, and people are like, oh, listen to what this person has to say. Yeah. And I like that. I don't mind the gray hairs at all. I'm never going to dye my hair. I'm never getting any sort of like stuff. Like, I'm down to grow old, because that's what happens when you're a human being. And I'm not going to fight it. Like, why? Why would you fight nature? Like, why would you fight your purpose, is to like grow. And as an insatiable learner that we've already talked about, time is knowledge. Like you said, like, every day I'm gaining knowledge, and you can do that no matter where you're at. I feel like so many people forget that in today's age, where you literally have information of every kind at your fingertips. How many people push themselves every day to learn something new, to perfect their craft? Like we were just talking about a little earlier, I fell off the creative desire for my restaurant. I didn't like it. I didn't want to be there. And this is after remodeling the whole place and reopening. And I'm just like, I thought that I would just be full of inspiration. And I was just so blech about the whole thing. And my crew started feeling that, and the guests started feeling that. And we're still, doing top tier food. I'm not saying the food was bad, but I was unhappy again, And it took me diving into books and reading other chefs and listening to food podcasts and going and working for free at other restaurants.
Wow.
Just to get inspired, just
That's
to be
incredible.
like, yeah, I'm like sitting there picking garnish, and the restaurant I was at was so funny because they didn't tell them who I was. So they're thinking I'm there to try to get a job. And they're having me pick garnish, and then we're talking throughout the day. And I'm not one of those guys that's like, I own a restaurant, I'm Michelin rated, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But they're asking me, and they're like, oh, you trying to work in here? I'm like, no, I own a restaurant. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I own Localis. They're like, you own Localis in Sacramento? Like, they knew of the restaurant.
Yeah.
They had heard of it, And I'm like, yeah, that's me. They're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, trying to get out of my funk, like trying to see how someone else does things and get inspired. And it takes a level of egolessness to get to that spot where you can be like, hey, I'm good. Like, I don't need to be the man all the time. I can go there and pick garnish and not complain about it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did. And then diving into these books and remembering why I cook, why I love the science of food and all this. And then like real quickly, the menu just started like taking off. And every chef says their next menu is the best menu. But this time, like, it's so noticeable and palpable in the restaurant and you can know by the guests, right? They tell you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Great dinner. That was great. To like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like,
that's the best dinner I've ever had.
Yeah.
Like, this is my favorite restaurant I've ever been to, And that comment's so funny because what restaurants have you been to? Right?
Yeah.
I love all compliments, thank you. But at certain times, I'm just like, what are we compared to, right?
Yeah.
If it's TGI Fridays and Olive Garden,
I'll take it all. I'm like, can you actually record that real quick? I'm gonna make it my ringtone.
Totally, right?
It's gonna be my alarm.
You are the best artist.
It's the best art in the world. I'm like, I'll take it. So, with the paint method, it's a process of how we create our life, and we don't know it really until we stop and think about, okay, where are we? And then knowing where we are, what do we create next?
Yeah.
And what you're describing right now is this point, it's the end, which is these new situations that help us grow. Sometimes we're thrown into it. Could be, things like a pandemic. It could be feeling a funk and feeling that I'm just not personally growing as much. I'm successful. I've got momentum. Things are going, but my passion level is getting lower.
Yeah.
And so we throw ourselves in those new situations, so self-inflicted in a sense, to cause growth. It's almost like the creative process all over again. You're not fully going back to the beginning, but you are at a point where like, I need something. And so how long was that period for you? Because maybe some people who are listening to this or watching this may be at a point where they've got a lot of momentum, family, business, but now they feel like they're coasting.
Yeah.
And they feel like they're missing a passionate part that they want to enjoy about this part in the life. How long was that period of noticing it, or actually, noticing it and then actually working through it?
Yeah, like 2 months.
That's not long.
No, but I've had lots of these throughout my life. It's just harder as, when you lose a position or something bad happens, it's a different thing. It resets you and you're like, oh man, like things are not looking great, COVID, like things are, what are we going to do? Like, is the restaurant going to be here? It puts you in a weird spot. But this last one, I have all the things. My family is incredible. Like my wife and I, 20 years in, are living a new marriage. It's like a honeymoon. And
That's
my
so
kids,
amazing.
Seriously,
I love hearing that. I love hearing that people find a passion again, whether it's what you were just talking about with your creative stuff, but also in relationships.
Yeah. Remember what you have, like the grass is not greener. It's all about like, it's so funny. Like my mind was in other places. like, and silly stuff, like online stuff, stuff I shouldn't be looking at, whatever. When your mind's there, it's not on your other person. It's
Mhm.
not on your partner. And it's real funny how all of a sudden, this partner becomes obsolete because you have this. And then when you realize this isn't real and this is real, the second that you give that back attention, all of it, you get rid of all the other stuff and you just pay attention, you might have to figure some things out, but instantly you'll remember and you're there again. You're like, okay, like I'm married to this person. Like we've gone through kids together. We've gone through all sorts of things together. And I love this person. And even willing yourself into love when you feel like, oh, what is it all about? Like, act like it.
Mhm.
And then pretty soon your actions start taking into your heart. And pretty soon you're like, I love this person.
Yeah.
And then it's easy, it's real easy right now to love my wife. And we can talk now. We never talked really
Mhm.
all these years of being married, and we're talking now about everything. We're joking about things that are sensitive, like all the
Yeah.
right things that we're doing. And the restaurant successful, like everything was going for me. And that's why it was so weird when I'm just like, I don't want to go to work and I don't want to write any menu and I don't want to do this. And it was all because I had transitioned to arrogance out of confidence. And I
Yeah.
think that's something I've realized in the last 2 weeks. That's what happened. When you start slacking and you start not caring so much and you start not doing all the things that you should do, you have to rely on arrogance to get you through the day because you're like, I'm good and I do this and I do that. But confidence is this quiet partner that you can have where you're comfortable with who you are because you're doing what you are supposed to be doing. And I needed my confidence back. And part of that was being more knowledgeable on the food that I'm, talking about and wanting to do, reading more about like fermentations. And so I don't have to feel arrogant and be like, well, I want to do it this way because, like, no, I'm doing it this way because of this, this, and this. I just read this cool book by Michael Pollan, talked about fermentation. We got to wait for this. And you get confidence because you know what you're talking about, and that's what I needed. And
Yeah.
I need to remember that for the future, in every aspect of my life. Am I being arrogant or confident? Because the second that you get arrogant, you're making up for shortcomings and they're all yours. They're all your own. So the only thing you can do, redirect your energy, get back to what you're doing and be confident.
Yeah. That's incredible. I'm so happy that you're sharing these perspectives, especially people who are chasing a dream right now. Maybe they're like full on in it. And it's easy to start pushing away your first loves. I went through a point when I was 25 years old, and I think I shared this story with you. When I was 25, and at the time I was married, and I was going through a lot. I was experiencing success in my career, but I was also pushing away a lot of my first loves and my wife at the time and, family. And I went through this transformation where I just said, you know what? I'm going to truly give my life to God. Whatever your plan is with this, I'm ready. I'm ready for that. Like just taking ego as much out of my situation as possible. And from that point on, really having a filter of something that's just bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
Every day is not about me. Every argument is not about me. Every success is not about me. That there are people in my life that I get to share this with. There's a creativity that comes from a place that I don't even know where it came from. And this perspective shift, it changed everything. From that point on, from 25 on, I mean, I could say that true momentum came from that moment. And you had a similar moment about a year ago or so where you had a major shift
Yeah.
in
2 years
and
now.
I don't know if it was started by a perspective change or if it was kind of just everything happening at once. But tell me about this experience going on this TV show, The Globe. It's on the Peacock Network. I mean, it's a massive audience,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to share this. But what was that like going into this show?
Going into the show, it was all timing. Like you just said, you're not in control, and I was not in control. And I spiraled to the very bottom of life. Everything was bad. Nothing was good. It was a spot I've never been in, and I think creative people have a tendency to be able to go to extremes, whether that's dark or light, like because we are constantly, we're creating realities, you know what I mean? And for me, I was very good at spinning realities and then living in them, even if it wasn't reality in the world, is reality in my mind. And I sunk to a very dark place and was saved in a really incredible way. and decided at that moment that I did not want to be my own God anymore. Before that, I had always been my own God, my destiny. I make all the choices. I'm in control of everything. And you realize, at least for me, that I was failing miserably. Number one, I was doing a terrible job. And number two, like, I was so tired. I had never rested, because when it's all on you, it's all on you. And I reached this point, and, this incredible day, and time in my life happened. I went down and I went up, and I went down and I went up afterwards, like in faith and out, and, trusting and not trusting, and, still going back to my old ways, but realizing that now and being able to see it and stop myself. And when I got this call for the show, I mean, I was just literally sitting down at my counter, like writing something, menus, and get a call like, "Hey, do you want to be on this TV show?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, of course, And at that time too, I hadn't traveled. Travel to me is life. I travel, I get inspiration for food, I come back, I write menus about that travel. Not just the food that we eat, but the experiences that we have. Like, we had a dish about a rainy day in Thailand. You know what I mean? Like, that's the inspiration, was a rainy day in Thailand. And when you don't have that all of a sudden because of, travel restrictions and everything in COVID, I started like dying inside, because I was like, man, I was writing menus every 2 weeks, and I'm just pumping out all this creativity. And then
You're
it's
like
just
missing out on the inspiration, which is
Yeah.
like it's like a romantic spark for every
Yeah.
artist.
And I'm like going back to the same thing, and I'm going back to the same thing. And I was just getting burned out. And then I get this phone call, and then it happens, and it was so fast. It was crazy fast. And they just found me, they're like, "Hey." And
What was it? The Instagram food photos?
yes, it was.
There you
And
go.
because I was filmed on Chopped. So they came to the restaurant, they did the whole filming section, like to be on there. They canceled me March 18th, 2020.
Wow.
The day they shut down New York.
Wow.
I was supposed to be flying to New York to shoot
Chopped. Wow.
I had actually.
Did that crush you? Just like,
Oh yeah,
because that's another big opportunity.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was doing a test run. My kitchen staff had been acquiring these mystery baskets and timing me 20, 30 minutes,
Wow.
like, and I'm practicing.
I love that. I
And
love
I'm like,
drills.
oh yeah.
Like, even here, we do drills
Yeah.
for painting, printing, and so on. So
Yeah, can you do it in this amount of time,
Mhm.
and even though you're not selling that painting right then and there, like, you act like you are,
Yep.
know? And I had just finished up. I had crushed a really hard round, Nesquik beef livers, canned nopales, and
Nesquik, the
tamarind
chocolate.
paste. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a funky basket, and I killed it,
Wow.
right? I just got it done in time, delicious food. I'm like, yes, and I had missed a call, and it was them calling me to tell me that they were canceling.
Damn.
And it was like that crushing blow, and I'm like, oh. And then 6 months later, they set me up in Nashville or Knoxville, canceled. And I'm just like, I was pissed at that point. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't even care about it anymore. Like, I'm not doing this again. Like, I'd already purchased plane tickets, the whole deal. Like, I'm
Yeah.
right there. And once again, like, why did that happen? Because if I would have done Chopped, I wouldn't have been able to be on the Globe.
Yeah.
And the Globe was such a better opportunity for me. And I go down to LA, and at that point in time,
And what is the format of the Globe? So people that may not have seen it yet.
yeah. So 4 chefs are in the stage, huge screen. It encompasses the whole place. Like, you're in whatever that screen is. And then you travel to these places, They make it look like that, and then they wheel out a cart of ingredients, and that's all you have to cook with is from that area. Very different than Chopped, because you have this huge pantry. You can rely on potatoes, you can rely on onions and this and that and all these basic things.
Yeah.
On the Globe, you only cook with what you have on that board.
And they're regions that if you're not, world traveled, you may not be familiar.
Oh, no.
Or at all with.
And
them.
I saw some people that were like, I've never cooked this cuisine. I don't know
Yeah.
what any of these ingredients are, Luckily, I travel a lot, and I had a pretty good, my insatiable learning is just like, what's this ingredient? What's that ingredient? What's that preparation? Where's this from?
Yeah.
And I go down there, and for the first time in my life, I didn't have to prove anything to anybody. And I didn't give 2 shits if I lost. I was having a good time. My family
That's
life was
amazing.
great. I'm loving my new community, with my church. I'm successful at the restaurant during COVID. Like, everything is going well. And I'm like, well, this is extra. It's a bonus. I think that's the only reason I won the whole first season was
Wow.
because I just didn't care. It wasn't like I was like, oh, I lost. The first round, I definitely thought that I was going home.
Yeah.
I should have gone home. I screwed up big, but I was so creative with the ingredients that round that they let me through because the other guy just sprinkled some stuff on top of a dish.
Yeah.
And then, I won the first round, and then I won the whole thing. And the whole time I was just kind of like, this is
You're like, I'm
this
still
is
here.
crazy.
They
Yeah.
haven't walked me out yet, so I'll just
Exactly,
keep going.
And it just happened like that, and
Wow.
it was a cool experience. I've never done anything like that, like to be on the backside of a major network TV show
Yeah.
was strange.
But you
and-
didn't, did you have any moments where you're like, hell yeah, I'm supposed to be here? Like,
Oh
at
yeah.
any moment where you're like, I'm that guy. Like, even though there's a humility, because that's just your spirit, there is a humility with that. But also, you got to have those moments where
Confidence.
confidence.
Not arrogance. Confidence
Yeah.
of just like, I'm here and I'm good at this. Like,
Yeah.
I know what I can do. And
Mhm.
I'm going to throw down and you're going to be hard pressed to beat me because I'm going to come at you. Like,
Yeah.
and I prayed for every opponent that we had on there.
I love
I
that.
said, hey, if you're down, if not, no big deal, but I just want to open it up. And I prayed for all of us to have steady hands, clear minds, and a really good time, and let's enjoy it. And everyone was like, they didn't see me as like this threat. They were just like, oh, he's a badass chef, but he's also really cool, and nice and polite. And I just got to showcase who I am on a TV show, and that was really cool.
Yeah.
And we made friends that we're still friends. We still have these really cool communications with people from all over, the U.S. And it was just a really beautiful experience. I thought it was going to do a lot more for my career, to be
Mhm.
totally honest with you.
Yeah.
I definitely had built it up way too high. I was
think
like,
so?
this is my launching pad, like now I'm going to get all these other offers and I'm going to get this and my restaurant's going to be packed, and
Yeah.
it just, I don't know if it was just Sacramento that was just like, meh.
It's interesting because I've been in a similar situation. And I think everything has to do with what you do with the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen, people that were on the same season of America's Got Talent with me. I came in fourth. Like, I was like far from winning, but also, we were in the top. But I know what the top three are doing now. I know what they've done. And so even with fourth or first, whatever it is, it's really like how you capitalize on it in so many different ways. Some people get really, really lucky, and it's like, there's no control.
Yeah.
People that have been in similar situations like us, it's like really what we do with it. How do we capitalize? Like, yes, it's a huge check mark on the resume, but it's and also Sacramento is an interesting place because when I was going through it, I was still living here. Like, it's always been my home, and Sacramento is like a big little city.
Yeah.
They're like, they do want to talk about like, oh, that's our guy, he did that, but they may not always respond in that support. Like,
of course,
I can't speak on behalf of other cities, but that is sort of the experience here, for better or for worse. But here's the thing, whatever expectations were, and Localis has still continued to grow in just popularity. And, people that I know that never go out to restaurants at all. Like, some family of mine was going to the restaurant recently. They're like, oh, we're going to Localis, and we heard about this chef. I'm like, we know the guy.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I hear it more and more. And that's what's really interesting. It's not just this secret, which now it's like so hard to get a reservation there, but
not all the time though. We still got some seats.
That's true. Yes, definitely. Good. And we'll talk about how to get a reservation there. But I do love to hear people that I kind of know start to learn about you. And I think you are in the long game. You are in the career relationship mindset for all this, always have been. And, it'll last for so much longer. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. And we didn't really see any response from the show in the restaurant. It was just kind of like business as usual.
Yeah.
And we've definitely had some people that came in and like, hey, we saw you on the Globe. That's really cool. But I think it was, once again, it was meant to be, because why did I build it up so much? You know what I mean? Like, I was always realistic. I didn't think like, now I'm famous and now I'm rich and now I'm this and that. But I was like, this could be potential for so many great things, you know? So I started thinking that way. And then when it didn't happen, it was a big ego blow. And I had to look at myself and I said, so you've gotten arrogant. You thought that you were going to get, what are you owed, Chris? What are you owed? Nothing. So be really grateful for what you have right now. And as soon as I did that, I locked in on that. I got rid of it. The show was cool. I got some cash. I'm remodeling my house right now.
Yeah.
Actually, my flooring got dropped off today. But that's that tenacity, right? Like, oh, you paying someone to do it? I'm like, no, I'm remodeling my house. Like, I'm doing it, because I have the
Yeah.
skill set. And that means I got to get up on my days off, and I got to come home and do some electrical work before I go to bed. And I got to get up in the morning, feed the boys breakfast, and, hook up my sub panel or whatever it is.
Mhm.
But I'm driving right now because I'm focused on my life. Like, I want
Yeah.
my wife to have the nest that she wants, and I want my kids to have me, and I want to teach them how to like do construction stuff, because it's important to me for them to know what they're talking about, and,
Yeah.
and to know how to do some things. So life is just really good once again, and who knows what, it can still be something,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, and it definitely will, and I think as long and I think too is being open to opportunities, it is easy to get jaded by like, "Well, I did that thing and it didn't do this." I could tell you a million of them that we've done that I thought like, "That was it."
yeah.
It wasn't. And I just gotta keep going, and, those are really truly things that are in God's hands, or they're in things that are just out of your control,
Yeah.
and all you can do is just keep reminding people why you won that, or
Yeah.
why, and build your business. Now, the last part of the paint method is really about, you've gone through this experience, you've really created a colorful life, and you've acquired a lot of knowledge along the way. How do you impart this knowledge? And as a chef, it's like you explained this to me earlier. As a chef, it's like me creating art through a team of 20 people,
Yeah.
5 to 20 people. And I have to direct every part of it to make it look and feel like it's my hand, my brushstroke, my, technique. What is that like to have to turn on teacher or leader when you're creative, when you're running a restaurant and you're dealing with numbers, but now you have to teach on a day-to-day basis? It's not like going back and starting a course and you're going to put it online. This is looking at people in the eye every day and saying, I need you to do it again differently, and so
Yeah.
on. Like, what is that like though, being a creative
Mhm.
chef and still having to teach on a daily basis?
It's an amazing thing if you're confident and not arrogant. And I'm going to keep repeating that because it has to become a mantra in my life. Because the second I get arrogant when I'm teaching, they're not learning anything. I'm being the chef and telling them rather than teaching them. And confidence now, like Sean is a line cook at Localis, and he'll watch this, so he'll know. More heart than anyone else in the kitchen, really wants it. Technically has to work harder than most to get it, right? And it's been frustrating and fulfilling when he has a really hard time and then gets over it and then learns. And duck on this last course, or on this last menu that we're serving right now, he didn't tell me I'm not comfortable cooking duck, and then did not cook duck well.
Mhm.
And customers can't have that. I can't serve duck that's not cooked well. It has to be perfect. And confidence recently, from all my inspiration of getting back into cooking and getting back into learning, and just, I was like, all right, well, like, let's really do this. And we worked with him for a couple of days on last night, and he's turning out like these perfect ducks, perfect. And he sees now I under rendered it. He's understanding not just here's how you cook a duck, but here's why you cook a duck like that. Here's why the pan has to be cool to room temperature before it goes on the heat. Here's all these things, and he's getting it now. That to me inspires me to continue that same process with every opportunity that I get, of like, why is this like this? Perfect. Let's dive in. Let's give it some energy. And I think that being a creative is hard when you have to fulfill that thing with a team. Because like you said, like, I want it to look exactly like this. I want it to taste exactly like this. Why can't you see exactly what I want and do it? And then there's a certain element of letting go a little bit. And recently, like, is the dish beautiful? Yes. Is it exactly what I want? No. Am I happy? Yes. This person put their own little thing on it. They wanted to do this. And sometimes I'm critical enough to be like, I want the stems like this.
Yeah.
Other times I'm like, that looks great. Good job. And I think it's really fulfilling to be a creative, to work with the whole team, because as much as you want the sole focus, like, it's my art. It's even funner when you can be like, it's my art with this whole team of people doing it.
Yeah.
When it works, it's a symphony. It's beautiful. When it doesn't work, it's destroying you. You know what I mean? So it's a very, very harsh set of like, oppositions to each other, where when it's good, it's so good and everyone gets to be part of it. And when it's bad, you just get to feel terrible about everything.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult.
And you know, correct me if I'm wrong or if you agree with this or not, but becoming a better teacher requires you to go be a student. And I like to do this a lot. I like to go and watch a lot of tutorials on even how to paint,
Mhm.
like how to paint an eye, how to paint an ear, and so on. And I'm learning how to teach from these teachers, but
Yeah.
I'm also learning these skill sets as well. So, and this is the case for, you know, video production, for other stuff that we do here in the studio, printing, fulfillment. I'll go study this, and so I can really take note from those teachers and be just a better leader for my team. And some of the most successful creatives that I know that I look up to, they're amazing leaders.
Mhm.
And I think that crossing over to go from, you know, being successful and then being highly successful, you know, where there's just so much momentum, it's shifting into becoming a leader in some way, shape, or form. And that starts with teaching.
Yeah.
You know, it starts with, you know, being aware of, am I getting this information across in a clear way? Or how am I following up with the team and setting expectations and so on? So,
Yeah, I fully agree. And I'm constantly thinking, does this person want to learn from me?
mhm.
That's a big part of it. You have to inspire people to want to learn from you. You can't just be like, here, I'm going to teach you this. You know, it's like kids sitting in a classroom. An engaging teacher drives focus in their classroom. You know, like people are like, oh my gosh, I love this guy. He's got a crazy idea and this is cool and he's doing this and he's doing that. Versus like, you know, like, hey, here's what we're learning. Open your books and we're reading. So I try to stay really focused on being an inspirational leader by leading by example. You know, and that once again falls into that really fine line of like, do I have to be on the line then every night, like showing them, you know, like what a good line cook is? No, like I don't need to have that, you
Yeah.
know, but I do need to take the time, settle down and be like, okay, this person's asked me 3 times about this thing. Time to stop, really give it some serious attention and dedication, you know, and see if that's going to work better. And usually it always does when you give more energy, more clarity and focus to what you're trying to teach. And definitely, you know, you're saying you're watching other, you know, artists, you know, and other teachers on art. I do the same thing with all the books I'm reading, you know, like now I get to translate that. I'm a very quick learner. So I get the information and then I can regurgitate it to everyone that wants to hear it. And now we have something that we can continue the conversation about. And I think that's important too in the kitchen is like, why is this like this? You know, like we had a fermentation go south.
Yeah.
It smelled like sewage.
Oh, fermentation going south does not sound like
No,
it would smell
no.
good.
But luckily I just read this chapter on fermentation and I knew that sometimes these ferments go through times where the stink is gross, but lactobacilli will come back, overtake those, and then you'll get back to like smelling delicious again. The old me would have just thrown that away, been like nasty, like get it out of here, you know?
Yeah.
But I knew because I had just freshed my memory. So we got to have a really long conversation about the smell. And then 2 days later, smell it again. It's like, it's gone. Now it
Yeah.
smells delicious again, you know? So it's like having that knowledge and now they're excited to like ferment things and do things. And that's going to drive them to keep pushing. And then maybe I get to learn something back, you know, like maybe I get to be like, what are you doing with this? And then they're doing that. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, let's try that on the menu. So I think it's a fun kind of rotation. If you inspire learning by teaching, that you're always going to inspire teaching by learning too.
Yeah, I love that. And I know firsthand that you're a great teacher. And I don't know if you remember this, but you during COVID, you were doing these, I think, Valentine's Day dinners,
Mhm.
and they were sort of like prepped, you know, to a certain extent, and then you take them home and we kind of put them together. Well, we had gotten ours, and you asked the next day, like, how was it? And I was like, oh, it was amazing. And he said, so how did you heat up the meat? And I was like, huh? Like, no. What we sent you was the ingredients. You were supposed to cook them. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I was like,
I remember
I know I'm slow, but I didn't think I was that slow. And so you're like, dude, just here, I'm going to set it up another one.
Yeah.
You need to do it this way. Here's the link. I watched the video and I was like, oh my God. So I watched the video. I followed along and it was still an incredible meal. We
Yeah.
we still ate it and loved it. So I would attest to you. You're a great teacher.
Oh, thank you
as well.
That was funny. I was mortified. I'm like, you just ate it all as is. Like, yeah. I'm like, oh,
Most
man.
of it, yeah. I definitely needed the guidance. But man, I could sit here and talk for hours with you. We'll definitely have to do a part 2.
Oh, of course.
But for now, tell people where they can find information about you, Localis, and just anything else that you're working on right now.
Yeah, well, there's localissacramento.com. There's also chrisbarnumdan.com is my personal thing. I'm trying to get involved in a little bit more of like using cool ingredients and, tools and stuff like that, is like a personal thing for me to fulfill. But the 2 websites, obviously on Instagram, is a great way to kind of check out what we're doing. I love how instant it is. It's not an email that you have to open. You can just scroll by and see something cool. So
Yeah.
we're always kind of on that. And then, swing by and just say hi at the restaurant, 21st and S, 2031 S Street. And we're just kind of doing our thing there. And reservations are required unless you know me. And we always have table 20, which is like my private table that I get to give out to people. Yeah. We did it for Patrick Harbison on Valentine's Day.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah.
That food looked amazing.
Yeah, that's the new menu. I'm telling you.
Oh, I've been missing out. I know. I definitely need to go
Yeah.
ASAP.
And he's helping me right now too, like, because like we talked about earlier, he's saying, we got to do more stuff in Sacramento. I'm like, I kind of done everything in Sacramento. And it's like, nope, remember that, like, you just keep pushing. You just keep staying on top.
It's true. It's true. And I can only attest to that, 18 plus years later. So, man, I'm proud and honored to call you a friend.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I'm also just incredibly inspired by you, your journey, your view on life. I'm sure people who are listening to this and watch this, it's something definitely sparked in someone watching and listening to this. So thanks for being on the Paint Method.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, man.
I can't wait to have you back.
Awesome. I can't wait to be
already.
Back. It's fun.
But I'm gonna see you at the restaurant first.
All right, yeah, definitely. You got a girl you need to bring in there pretty quick
yes,
here, so.
And she loves to eat. Thank you, brother.
Awesome, thank you.
Appreciate
man.
it. Yes.
Of course.